My name is Grace Calloway. I'm 34 years old. I'm a hospice nurse. 3 weeks ago, a dying man grabbed the lanyard around my neck, squinted at my name tag, and started crying. Not the quiet crying you hear in hospital rooms at 2 in the morning. This was different. His shoulders shook, his hands trembled, like something inside him had just broken open. Then he looked at me and whispered 5 words that changed everything. "Your mother said you died in an accident." That sentence demolished everything I thought I knew, because my entire life I had been told my father abandoned me, that he chose drugs over his daughter and disappeared. But this dying stranger kept staring at my face like he recognized me. Then he asked me one question: "How old are you?" When I answered, he closed his eyes and started crying harder. Then he said something that made my knees go weak. "I've been looking for you for 32 years." In that moment, I realized the man lying in that hospital bed might be my father, and everything my mother told me might have been a lie. Before I take you back to that night, if this kind of story hits you somewhere real, somewhere you weren't expecting, hit subscribe and drop in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. I want to know who's up at this hour with me. I live alone in a second-floor apartment in a mid-sized city in Ohio. The window faces a pharmacy parking lot. I work overnights at a palliative care facility, 7 in the evening to 7 in the morning, 3 nights a week. The rest of the time, I sleep, eat standing at my kitchen counter, and try to remember what it feels like to have a full Saturday to myself. I chose this life deliberately. When I was 7, I asked my mother where my daddy was. She was at the sink, washing dishes. I remember because her hands went still when I asked, even though the water kept running. She didn't turn around for what felt like a long time. "He chose drugs over you, baby." Her voice was unsteady. "He's not in our life. He's gone." I climbed up onto the kitchen stool behind her and hugged her around the shoulders. She was shaking. I told her, "I'll never leave, Mama. I promise." I kept that promise for 27 years. Every patient I ever sat with at the end of their life, every hand I held, every family I guided through those final hours, it all traced back to that kitchen, that running water, my mother's shaking shoulders, the story she told me. I didn't know yet that every word of it was invented. It was a Tuesday in October. I clocked in at 7, like always, checked the board, grabbed my clipboard. New admission, room 14, Daniel Calloway, 55, stage 4 pancreatic cancer, transfer from a hospital in another state, moved closer so a family friend could be nearby for the end. I didn't think anything of it. We get transfers. I walked down the corridor, fluorescent lights, that familiar tired hum, the supply closet that always smells like antiseptic and grief. I knocked twice, pushed open the door. He was thin, jaundiced, that deep, unmistakable yellow that tells you the liver is failing, cheeks hollowed out, arms bruised from repeated IV placements. But his eyes were open, sharp, tracking me as I came in. "Good evening, Mr. Calloway," I said. "I'm Grace, your overnight nurse. I'm going to get your vitals and make sure you're settled." He nodded, quiet, polite. I leaned across him to adjust the drip line and felt his fingers close around my badge, firm, sudden, much stronger than a man in his condition should have been. I looked down. He was staring at my name. His lips were moving, but nothing was coming out. Then his eyes filled, and this dying stranger, this man I had known for 40 seconds, started crying. "Calloway," he whispered. "Your name is Calloway." I stepped back gently, eased my badge from his hand. "Sir, you're safe. Can you tell me what's wrong?" He couldn't stop looking at my face, like he was reading something written there that I couldn't see. "How old are you?" 34. His jaw tightened. A tear ran sideways into the pillow. "I've been looking for you for 32 years. The room felt like it had gotten smaller. The hum of the lights seemed louder. I could hear my own breathing. "Sir, with respect, the medication can sometimes cause—" "Your mother," He cut me off, quiet but certain. Her name before she remarried was Sandra Marsh. My blood stopped moving. Sandra Marsh, my mother's maiden name, the name I had only ever seen on a single document, my own birth certificate, buried in a junk drawer I hadn't opened in years. A dying stranger in Ohio had just said my mother's maiden name. "My father was an addict who walked out on us," I said. My voice wasn't quite right. "He passed away years ago." He looked at me with an expression I have never seen on a patient's face before, and I have sat with hundreds of dying people. It wasn't confusion, it wasn't medication, it was recognition. "I have never used a drug in my life," he said, "and I spent everything I had trying to find you." He pointed toward the chair near the window. A worn canvas bag sat there, faded, soft at the corners, the kind of bag that has been opened and closed thousands of times. "There's a folder inside," he said. "Please look." My hands moved before my brain agreed. I pulled out a manila folder, thick and warm from years of handling. I opened it. First page, a birth certificate. Father, Daniel James Calloway. Mother, Sandra Lynn Marsh. Child, Grace Marie Calloway. Date of birth matching mine exactly. Below that, a photograph. A baby in a yellow onesie on a patchwork quilt. I knew that face. I had seen it once in a photo album my mother kept, the only baby picture she'd ever shown me. I turned the page. Private investigator receipts. Dozens of them, spanning from 1995 to 2018. Different firms, different cities, all looking for the same person. Then the letters. Handwritten, lined paper. Dear Grace at the top of every single one. I picked up the first, dated June 1995. "Happy 3rd birthday, little girl. Daddy doesn't know where you are, but I'm looking. I built you a birdhouse today. It's on the porch in case you ever come home." My hands were shaking so badly, the paper made a sound. I had spent 32 years believing I had been abandoned, and this man had spent 32 years writing letters to a daughter he was told was dead. I made it to the hallway before my legs gave out. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, the folder in my lap. The light above me flickered once. I called my closest colleague. It was 3 in the morning. She picked up on the second ring. That's what hospice nurses do. We never fully sleep. "What happened?" "I think my patient might be my biological father, and I think my mother lied to both of us for 32 years. Silence. Then, "Tell me everything." I told her. The badge, the name, Sandra Marsh, the birth certificate, the letters, the investigator receipts. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she exhaled slowly. "Can you verify any of this independently? The birth certificate matches, the name is right, the dates line up. Then you need to find out the truth, Grace, not for him, for you." I looked down the hallway toward room 14. Through the cracked door, I could see the green glow of the monitor. Steady rhythm. This man, 4 to 6 weeks left, maybe less, would die believing his daughter was dead if I said nothing. If I went to my mother, 32 years of the only story I had ever known would come apart. Daniel had a contact, a retired attorney named Frank Alderton, based in the town where Daniel was from, a man who had helped him file the original missing persons report and kept every document in a fireproof box for 3 decades. I sat in my car in the parking lot as the sun came up, flat and gray, and dialed the number. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Mr. Alderton, my name is Grace Calloway. Daniel gave me your number." 5 seconds of silence. 10. Then a 67-year-old man broke down completely. "Oh my God." His voice cracked in half. "You're alive." He confirmed everything. The investigator reports, the missing persons case files, police correspondence across multiple states. All of it preserved. "Your father refinanced his house twice, sold his truck. He never remarried.
He never stopped. Then Frank said something that made me pull over. "I have a letter your mother wrote in 1994. She never sent. A mutual friend handed it to Daniel months later. In that letter, she admits you were alive and she was hiding you." I gripped the steering wheel. She wrote it down? Her own handwriting. Daniel kept the original. I have a notarized copy.
4 days later, I drove 40 minutes to my mother's house in the suburbs. Sunday dinner, pot roast, my stepfather talking about his business, my mother passing bread and asking about my shifts. I waited until he got up from the table. "Mom, what was my biological father's full name?" Her fork paused, just for a fraction of a second, a hitch most people would never catch, but I was watching. "Robert something," she said, setting her fork down. "I honestly don't remember. Why?" "Daniel James Calloway, born 1971, carpenter." The dining room clock ticked. Where is this coming from? Her voice had steadied, controlled. "Did someone contact you?" I noted that. She didn't say, "How do you know that?" She said, "Did someone contact you?" The phrasing of someone protecting a secret. "I didn't say anyone contacted me, Mom. I said his name." She stood up and began stacking plates with precise, careful movements. Her hands were trembling. The plates rattled. I followed her to the kitchen. "Mom, he's in my unit. He's dying, pancreatic cancer, and he has documents." She didn't turn around. Her shoulders went rigid. When she finally turned, I watched something shift behind her eyes, a calculation clicking into place. Her face softened. Her lip trembled. She pressed a hand to her chest. "How could you do this to me?" she whispered. "After everything I sacrificed." I'm not going to transcribe every word of what came next, but I will tell you this. She cycled through 3 different emotional registers in under a minute. Grief, fragility, cold anger, like someone shuffling through a deck of cards looking for the one that lands. At no point did she say, "That's not possible." She said, "He's a liar." That told me everything I needed to know. As I was leaving, halfway to my car, she caught the door before I could close it. Her voice dropped, flat, surgical. "That man has a few weeks left. After that, this is over. All of it. You want me to wait for him to die so the truth dies with him? I want you to think about what you're protecting." She leaned closer. "If you keep pushing this, I will make sure the right people know you've formed an inappropriate attachment to a patient. I know people on that hospital board, Grace." The air in my chest went cold. "Are you threatening my job? I'm protecting this family, like I always have." I looked at my mother, really looked, for the first time without the filter of gratitude I had carried my whole life, without the story of the brave, sacrificing single mother. I saw a woman who was cornered, who was calculating, who would set fire to her own daughter's career to keep a secret buried. "He has a letter, Mom," I said, "in your handwriting." Every bit of color left her face at once. I pulled out of the driveway. In the rearview mirror, she was standing under the porch light alone. She didn't go inside for a long time. The following Saturday, my mother was receiving a community service award at her church. 200 people, a podium, a projection screen, 30 years of photographs, a program describing the centerpiece of the slideshow as "A Mother's Sacrifice." She called me Friday evening to confirm I'd be there, front row, something nice. I drove to that ceremony. I sat in the 3rd row. My folder was in my bag. I want to be honest with you. I did not walk in there with a plan. I didn't rehearse anything. I didn't have a speech. But my mother had a plan. She'd had one for 32 years. The caster praised her. The applause filled the room. And then my mother stepped to the podium and began to tell the story. "When Grace's father abandoned us," she began, and something in me went very still. 20 minutes from that church, Daniel James Calloway was lying in a hospice bed, dying, holding a wooden box he carved for a baby daughter he believed had drowned. He had spent 32 years writing letters to her. He had sold his truck and refinanced his house trying to find her.
and my mother was about to receive a standing ovation for the story she invented to explain his absence. When the pastor asked if anyone wanted to add a few words, I stood up. My mother smiled at me from the stage, the proud mother smile. She thought I was coming up to thank her. I walked to the podium, adjusted the microphone. "Thank you, Pastor. Thank you all for being here." I looked at her. "Mom, you've told this story for 32 years. You've told it to me, to Gerald, to this church. So tonight, I'm going to tell you the truth." The room went the kind of still that only happens in churches and courtrooms. I was not shouting. I was not shaking. I used the voice I use at 3 in the morning when I have to tell a family their loved one doesn't have long left. Calm, clear, steady. I'm not here to humiliate my mother. I'm here because a man is dying, and the truth deserves to be heard at least once.
My father did not abandon me. I could feel it move through the room like a current. His name is Daniel James Calloway. He is a carpenter. He has never used drugs in his life. Right now, he is dying of pancreatic cancer at a hospice facility 20 minutes from this church. In 1994, my mother took me across state lines and told my father I had died in an accident. She told me he was an addict who walked out. She did this to start a new life. My father spent 32 years searching for me. He hired investigators. He filed missing persons reports. He wrote me a birthday letter every single year. I have read all 32 of them. I opened the folder, pulled out the letter, and I have this, in her handwriting, addressed to a friend, written in 1994. I read it aloud. 6 sentences, her looping A, the sharp downstroke on the Y, the way she crossed her T high, the same handwriting I had been reading on birthday cards for 30 years. The silence in that room was absolute. Then an older woman in the middle section stood up, picked up her handbag, and walked out, quietly, no drama, the way a person leaves when the decision is final. Then another woman, then a couple near the aisle. My stepfather sat in the front row with both hands pressed over his face. I folded the letter, slid it back. "I'm not doing this to hurt you," I said to my mother, "but I spent 32 years grieving a father who was grieving me. That ends today. I'm going to see my father now." I stepped back from the microphone, walked down the aisle. Someone squeezed my arm as I passed. An older gentleman near the back gave a single nod. I pushed through the double doors. October air hit my face, cold and sharp. I breathed it in. I drove straight to the hospice. When I walked into room 14, Daniel was awake. He looked thinner than he had 3 days before, but when he saw me come through that door, his face did something that broke and rebuilt my heart in the same second. He smiled. I sat down, took his hand. "Dad." I had never said that word to anyone in my life. I just told 200 people the truth. His eyes filled with tears. His body was too tired to properly produce. His hand tightened around mine. I called his mother from that room, my grandmother, 78 years old, still living in the same house where Daniel grew up. When the video connected and she saw us together in the same frame, she pressed both hands to her face. "Bobby," she whispered, using her son's family nickname. "She's there. She's really there." "I know, Mom." His voice was a thread. "I can see her." We stayed like that, 3 people connected across 2 cities by a phone screen and 32 years of loss. 16 days later, at 4 in the morning, my phone lit up. I didn't ask questions. I pulled on clothes, grabbed my keys, and drove through empty streets. I walked into room 14. His breathing had changed, long, irregular, with stretches between each breath that kept getting longer. I had heard this pattern hundreds of times with other patients. I knew exactly what it meant. I sat down and took his hand. His fingers were cool. "It's okay, Dad," I said. "I'm here. You can go." His eyelids moved, not open, just a small flutter, like someone deep in a dream. His hand tightened around mine, once, faint but unmistakable. At 4:12 in the morning, Daniel James Calloway exhaled.
And that exhale didn't end. It just softened and softened until it became silence. I sat with him for 20 minutes, maybe more. I held his hand and looked at the small carved wooden box on the bedside table and the folded slip of paper inside it. Grace Marie Calloway. My heart walks outside my body. Then I called his mother in Wheeling. Is he gone? Her voice was already broken. He's gone, Grandma. He was peaceful, and he was not alone. She sobbed, once, hard. He wasn't alone. Thank God he wasn't alone.
I had 19 days with my father. It should have been a lifetime, but those 19 days were enough to know that I had always been loved. I live in his hometown now. I transferred to the hospice unit at the regional medical center. I moved into my grandmother's house. She needed someone nearby, and I needed a family that didn't ask me to perform a story that wasn't mine. I kept his workshop, a converted garage behind the house, pegboard walls covered in tools, everything clean, everything in its place. I sit in there every morning with my coffee on a 3-legged maple stool he built, looking out through the open bay door at the same backyard where he once cut the branch that became the wooden box he carried with him for 32 years. On the workbench, the box, the photo of him holding me at 4 months old, and 32 letters held together with a rubber band. I've read all of them, some of them 100 times. 1 month after the funeral, I met my mother at a coffee shop in Dayton, neutral ground. She looked different, thinner, hair unstyled for the first time I could ever remember in public. I told her, I'm not here to punish you. I'm not here to forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I don't know. What I need you to understand is this. You stole 32 years from me and from my father. He died without those years back. Nobody can change that. If you want a relationship with me, it starts with complete honesty, not excuses, not justifications. The truth. All of it. She looked at her untouched coffee. What if I can't do that? Then we don't have a relationship, and that will be your choice, Mom, not mine. I put money on the table for the drinks, stood up. I loved the mother you pretended to be, I said. I'm still learning who you really are. Until you can show me that person, the real one, I need space. I walked out. The bell above the door rang behind me. My name is Grace Calloway. I'm a hospice nurse. I'm my father's daughter, and I was never, not for a single day of my life, abandoned. That's the story, the version that was never supposed to be told. If you had to choose between a comfortable lie and a painful truth, which do you pick? Type truth or lie in the comments. I genuinely want to know. And if this landed somewhere real for you, share it. Because there are fathers out there right now searching for children they were told didn't survive. And there are daughters who have spent their whole lives carrying a story that was never theirs to carry. Check the description for more. I'll see you in the next one.